ahead and get started. I want to remind our committee members that we are live streamed. Please turn on and use your microphones during the meeting. I also want to thank Alex Sorrell from the Kansas Bankers Association for our lunch today, and thank you, Senator Tyson, for making that available to us. If you haven't picked it up, then of course, be sure and grab that on your way out. We're going to get started with the county procurement practices that were brought to us by Representative Toplicker. Welcome, Heidi. Heidi will present our audit.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am here to present the county procurement audit. The audit team for this audit was Macy Smith, Tanner Rohr, Olivia Berzoni, and Chris Clark was the audit manager. This audit has just a single question. Do a selection of county governments have adequate procedures and controls to manage conflicts of interest in the procurement and contracting process? So first, for the short answer, for the 11 counties we reviewed, the larger counties appeared to have adequate policies and procedures to manage conflict of interest for purchases and contracts, but the smaller counties we reviewed did not. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of background information before I launch into kind of the longer answer. So I'm going to start on page 2. So counties buy many items, such as office supplies, software, and equipment, through a variety of different mechanisms. So when items are more expensive, the county generally will seek a few quotes to determine who has the best price. When the item is less expensive, county staff are often allowed to purchase an item without comparing quotes. The counties may also contract with a vendor to provide goods or services. Typically, when a county contracts with a company, they first seek bids and from various companies, and then a committee will review those bids and choose a company that is best on price and quality. The individuals responsible for purchasing decisions often varies across the counties as well. So in some counties, committees make decisions for certain purchases, and in other counties, a purchasing director makes a lot of the decisions. So it's important that any individuals who participate in the purchasing process, that they should avoid conflicts of interest. So conflict of interest occurs when a public official or public employee has a financial interest that influences or appears to influence the performance of their job duties. So conflicts of interest can create a number of issues. The county might buy a more expensive item, which costs the taxpayers more money. Vendors may choose to not participate if they believe that the process is not fair. And perhaps most importantly, the public may lose trust in decision makers if they believe that decisions are made to the benefit of those individuals rather than to the benefit of the public. So we identified 2 state laws that apply to elected officials and county staff that govern how counties handle conflicts of interest for purchases and contracts. And those laws are listed on the top of page 3. So one law prohibits local government employees or elected officials from contracting with a business that the employee or the employee's spouse has a substantial interest in. The other law requires local government employees and elected officials to report substantial interests if a conflict arises. Additionally, we identified a number of best practices for disclosing and managing conflicts of interest, and those sorts of practices included things like establishing a code of conduct that includes restrictions on those involved in purchasing decisions and providing training on ethics and conflicts of interest. So before I talk, though, about the policies that we found in the counties that we looked at, I do want to note here that although good policies are important, counties must rely on the honesty of their employees to detect most conflicts. Actively ensuring that conflicts do not exist is very difficult, and effectively detecting interpersonal relationships and how they relate to a given purchasing decision is time and resource intensive. As a result, counties often rely on their employees to honestly self-report their conflicts. The details of the findings start on page 4. We selected 11 counties to determine whether their purchasing and contracting policies aligned with state law and best practices. The 11 counties include the 5 most populous counties in the state, the 3 least populous counties, and 3 counties at the median. The results are not projectable to all Kansas counties because we did not choose these counties randomly. So we found was that generally the 5 larger counties had policies that aligned with state law and with best practices, but the smaller counties did not. So if you look on page 4, kind of the middle of the page, figure 1 shows the 11 counties that we looked at, and then the percentage of the state laws or best practices that their written policies addressed. So if you look there at that dotted line, the counties above that dotted line are those 5 larger counties, and you can see lots of high percentages in 100%, 90%, which indicate that their policies incorporated best practices in state law. If you look below that line, you see the 6 median and small counties, and you can see that those percentages drop off quite a lot, which indicates that these are counties that did not have policies that addressed the best practices and state laws that we looked at. So what we found, though, with the smaller counties is that they often relied on general employee codes of conduct, but they often lacked the specific written conflict of interest policies that we wanted to see. However, this is consistent, though, with what we often see in smaller government organizations. Smaller organizations have fewer staff members, and they tend to put a real premium on trusting their coworkers. And as a result, they do not create detailed written policies. We also reviewed some purchase documents to determine if counties' practices aligned with their written policies. Basically, we checked to see if counties actually did the things that their policies directed them to do. We selected 3 purchases made in 2020 from each of the 5 large counties in our selection. We did not conduct this work in the small counties because they did not have the detailed written policies necessary to conduct the work. So 6 of the 15 items we reviewed were purchased through bids or more formal processes, and counties generally followed their conflict of interest policies in these items. However, counties also purchase many items through other methods that receive much less scrutiny. So 9 of the 15 items we reviewed were made using these types of methods. And these include things like sole source purchases, where only one vendor can provide an item, and emergency purchases, which are made when a county needs to purchase something quickly. So counties typically had policies allowing these types of purchases, but they did not receive the same level of review as those purchases made through more formal steps. Last, we used information from contracts provided by all the counties and online searches to see if we could identify any obvious conflicts. For the contracts we reviewed, we did not uncover any issues. We did make one recommendation in this audit to the 6 median and small counties. We recommended that they should write more detailed conflict of interest and purchasing policies, and that those policies should incorporate state laws and best practices into them. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Heidi. And note, committee, before you ask questions of Heidi, that we do have Sedgwick, Johnson, Douglas, Wabanasi, and Grant online listening in case there are any questions for them. Any questions for Heidi? Yes, Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Heidi, were there any, did you uncover or look at any of the conflicts? Were there any grievances, particularly in the counties, well, any of the counties? And did you look at how they might have resolved those grievances with regard to some of the contract bids?
Most of the counties reported that they did not have a conflict of interest within their memory. I believe we had one who said that they did have a conflict, and that person ended up recusing themselves from the process. So in that particular case, that process kind of worked. That person red flagged it themselves, said, hey, I think I have a problem, and they decided to remove that person from that process. But most of the counties simply said, we can't think that we don't know of any conflicts that we've had in recent memory.
Heidi, I'll ask a question if there are no other questions from our committee. So the counties that were sampled here, in response to the audit, did any of them indicate that they would be changing their procedures and applying more state laws and creating better best practices?
all 6 of the counties that we made a recommendation to, which were the 3 median and the 3 small counties, and they all indicated to us that they are looking into this issue and they will be doing something to address these issues. You can find their individual responses on page 7. So each county did give us a little bit of information about what they plan to do, but based on what they told us here, they all plan to address this in some way or another.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm sure that the senators and representatives that represent each of these counties can be in touch with those local officials and find out what their plans might be and their best practices might be. Yes, Representative Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is there a reason, or are you aware of a reason Representative Topcliffe is not with us today? This is his audit. This is what he brought in.
I do not know where Representative Topcliffe is. I did text him, so I did not receive a response.
I just wondered because he was the one who really wanted this audit. And
Yes, I agree. It is his audit. Perhaps we'll try to reach out again and find out where he might be. Unfortunate. All right. Thank you, Heidi. And thank you to our counties that were online today for the audit. Committee, we're going to go ahead and move to our next agenda item. We have a security awareness training that's going to be provided by Justin. So thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You should be able to find a copy of your security awareness training in your notebook. I believe that is under tab A in your committee notebooks, one of the first ones there. Our intent in providing this to you today is for 2 reasons. One, it's a good faith effort to make sure that you as our committee members are receiving some background in this issue, because a lot of current IT security standards say that that's a general good practice. You're not our users per se, but because you deal with us and you look at our work, we felt that that was appropriate in this sense. So it's really a good faith effort on our part as the audit office to really take this to the limit, because we, of course, critique a lot of state agencies and governments when they don't do this, and so we feel like we need to take it very seriously. Secondly, we just want to demonstrate that at least when it comes to security awareness training, it's not really that complicated. And we hear this a lot from members who track our security audits. Can't you implement a security awareness training regimen that is easy? And our thought is, yes, you can. This is just a PowerPoint slide. We derive this from our much more in-depth training that we provide internally to our staff. So our training takes an hour. It's much longer than this. But so this is a summary level, but we want to just demonstrate that it's not really that difficult to cover these topics and make people aware of it. So I'm going to go through quickly. I'm not going to run you through. I hope to do this in 10 minutes. So it's just going to be a very high kind of level to orient you all to the things that we look for often when we talk to agencies about their security posture. So this training will cover the 12 areas that are required by the state's IT security standards. So when we talk to agencies, do you address security awareness training appropriately? We were referencing these 12 required areas, general topics that they have to cover. So you'll see a listing those on the next page, and I will just get started first and foremost with passwords. One of the best practices these days is to use passphrases instead of actually short words that are complicated, things that you can easily remember, like auditors are awesome, exclamation point, right? Long characters, it makes it very hard to brute force attack. It makes it easy to remember. So kind of best practice, if you're at a loss for how to create a strong password, just create a phrase that you can remember. I remember a long time ago, we had someone in our office, I think it's safe to share, it's something along the lines of a quote from 007, right? Some of those type of things. So anything that's memorable that you can remember. And of course, if you can throw in extra characters, those things, that's beneficial. And we always remind everyone, never ever share your password, even with your IT staff. Your IT staff can get into your accounts without your password. They have root control, so they don't need your password. The difference is they can't access it as you without your password, and that's the real danger. So the second area is privacy and sensitive information. Here, the key concept is just to be aware of the sensitive information that may be in your possession or that you may be coming across. And you as legislators probably come across some of this as people share their medical histories, HIPAA, FERPA data that they may be sharing with you. So just be aware that you may be seeing those things. Being careful when you're in public settings. So if you're in an airport and you're on your legislative laptop, that there may be someone looking over your shoulder, right? And in fact, for the high-tech security agencies, they actually make screen filters. We've thought about getting this as auditors, but we don't do much work in airports, so it's probably not worth the cost, but it'll actually black it out so when someone's looking at an angle, they can't see what's on your screen. So just be aware that people are looking for that. And then, of course, making sure you're not talking about that sensitive information when you're in a public forum, somewhere where someone can overhear you. That's something we talk about a lot in our office. Physical security, again, these are just highlights. There's a lot of other depth to these topics. We always remind people to be careful about piggybacking, which is when someone tries to slip in behind you. And so this is especially true on some of the side entrances. We as staff, when we walk in and it's a cold day and someone's trying to follow us in, we say, sorry, you can't come in this entrance, right? You have to, I usually walk with them to the public entrance so we can, unless I'm running late, so we can serve them, but you don't let them come in behind you. Or if you can't prevent them and they do it anyway, of course, the best practice, let security know someone followed me in. That's a common thing. We actually test this out with state agencies, officials, and staff. So we will come in and we will try to follow them in with their passwords into their data centers and areas like that. So there's some testing that we do as auditors. So people will try this, right? They'll try to follow you into places they shouldn't get access to. Of course, another aspect of physical security, don't leave passwords on stickies. I think we're all pretty well apprised of that these days. That used to be a thing, maybe not so much anymore. And being mindful to shred sensitive documents, making sure that there's anything that is especially sensitive, you put that through so that it destroys it. And that falls neatly into number 4. One of the reasons you shred those documents is because hackers will go through the trash. And I will let you know your auditors also go through the trash. And we find sensitive documents, right, in the trash can of state agency. We go around and we'll pull it out. We'll go to their main dumpsters and look for anything that's been discarded. They can give us information. So that is a thing. If you shred it, it helps eliminate that danger. Number 1, the phishing using email links. We all know, don't click on a link in an email that you don't recognize, right? That should be long-standing practice. Kind of an interesting one we see on occasion is what they call baiting with USB drives is the final one where they will leave a flash drive around. Someone will pick it up and pop it in their computer and it will have malware. So just being very mindful that there's a lot of bad actors that are trying these various ways to get into your systems and exercising caution. Identity theft, this highlights some of the same things. I'll cover this quickly. Complex passwords will help prevent that. Checking or locking your credit score, some of this, we're obviously, with the unemployment issue, some of us have been exposed to this recently because of that international kind of ring that went after folks. Of course, it's important that you always promptly report any of that theft to authorities so you can be on the record and have them start to watch that. When it comes to email usage, just using a strong spam filter to make sure you try to catch any of those malicious emails before they ever get to you in the first place so you don't have to worry as much about the bad links. Not clicking not only links, but attachments. If someone sends you a PDF file or a Word document in an email, you don't recognize it, downloading those, they can have macros installed in them that can try to put that on your system. And then, of course, making sure you don't send confidential email, confidential documents via your regular email. Internet usage, just being aware of pop-ups, making sure you are browsing appropriate places, that you're only using secure websites. That usually comes with a lock in that corner, so when you're under bank, you should see that secure lock, which indicates that's a secured site and you're not being phished, some fake site. Also usually a good idea to change your default passwords on your home router. So if like me, you have a home network, they often come with that standard. It's usually on the bottom of the modem. You can flip it over and see what it is. Best practice suggests you change that. They're usually fairly complicated, but they're also a password presumably someone may know already. So that's the idea that at least someone in the company may be aware of it. Viruses and malware, this is about keeping your software updated. You hear about this from us all the time. We'll say the agency did not patch its software, which just means it hasn't kept it up to date. That's a really big problem. Hackers use that. That's a primary way that they gain access to systems. They'll drop viruses and malware on systems they know are out of date. Of course, not installing suspicious programs and using caution when you're on public computers, like at the public library or something, recognizing that's not necessarily a safe environment. Software usage, I'm going to just hit this one super quick. Don't install unlicensed software. I don't think that's a problem for many of us. Maybe for some of the younger generation out there looking at interesting software platforms, I think we tend to stay within that realm. Being aware of copyrights and being careful of those file sharing programs like Dropbox, things where a lot of documents can be put in one place. Personal portable devices, so this would be your mobile devices, making sure you enable the security features if you're comfortable with that, like encryption, passwords, PINs, those type of things. Making sure you also allow your phone to update. They should prompt you, making sure you keep those up to date when you're prompted. We also recommend you consider encrypting your device. That's kind of a new thing, pretty easy to make sure that that's on lockdown. A lot of iPhones come encrypted already, so some of that's taken care of depending on your device. Another word about encryption, protects your data, obviously, puts it under lock and key. You can use software to do this, or you can actually use hardware to do this. So, for example, currently I have an iPhone, it's got the touchpad, that's a form of hardware encryption. You can also put software applications that will layer on top of that to just make sure that if your device were to get stolen, someone can have easy access to it. And then finally, reporting suspicious activity and abuse. We always like to mention that in IT security, you're only as good as your weakest link. So we like to make sure The people are aware that they try to train your users. If they see something suspicious, they raise it. If they see something go on, that you report it to your IT department, that you report it to management, say, hey, I saw this happening. I saw someone come in through the building. I saw my computer's acting very strangely. I keep getting these pop-ups. Anything that you see that's unusual, report it because it may be indicative of someone hacking the system. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members may have.
All right, thank you for that overview. Committee, what questions do you have? Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Justin, do you have a designated dumpster diver? I was just curious.
All of our IT auditors are eligible for that illustrious duty, Representative. Thank you.
Sounds like fun. Anyone else? Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Justin, for the overview. I know I've asked this before, but I just would like this group to be aware also. There's no networking checks at all, Ben, to check traffic on network and that. So how are you able to find all of the viruses and malware without doing that check?
So when we're doing our IT security audits of agencies, we often ask them to run what we call credentialed scans of their network to find stuff that's been installed. That's usually unpatched. Will also include, I think, viruses and malware. So it's looking for a host of things, unsupported systems. There's several limitations to that. If they have machines that are not credentialed, we cannot see that, obviously, and we sometimes will list that in a report. We can only run an uncredentialed scan, so we're not feeling very good about the results because it doesn't let us do the deep dive. Moreover, as I'm sure you know, Senator, you're familiar with it, there's a host of other controls, things like, firewall rules, which can be very complicated and create a lot of holes in the system. We don't have the time, energy, sophistication to go in and untangle state agencies, firewall rules. So our audits we think they give a very good general sense. They definitely do not cover everything. I will let the committee know, we take this stuff so seriously, we run all of these tests on ourselves, right? It's not independent, we're auditing ourselves, so that's not as good as having an external body come and do it. But every year, we assess ourselves against all of these items. I can tell you we have a dedicated list of any exceptions where we are not in compliance. We note the reason why, whether we need to remedy it. We fish our own staff, so we send out our own emails to our own people. We try these things, just in the interest of trying to make sure that we are taking this very seriously. So for our own network, we also scan regularly. I can tell you, without getting specific, our patch results are second to none. Whatever the state agencies, the ACE-year audits get, we do that or better. And that takes a lot of work to do, and I understand why they don't do it. When it comes to agencies, we have a lot of good insight in that. When it comes to ourselves, we try to do that. But you're right, there's still within that areas that we are missing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Justin. And it's nothing against you guys. I just wanted the committee to realize that this is a small part of the picture for IT security. And we do need to get better as a state. Nothing on you guys. You guys are doing a diligent job.
All right, if there are no, yes, Senator Corson.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. How big a threat are public wireless networks? Can you just talk about that a little bit? We always hear about, don't get onto a Wi-Fi network at an airport, library, coffee shop. Can you just talk about that? Thank you.
Yeah, Senator, so I generally know they are a threat. I don't have the expertise to speak specifically on how that would compare in general to other types of threats that are out there. So that's something certainly my IT team could do. What I would ask is, I will touch base with my IT Madam Manager. She's out of town currently. Ask her to put together a brief response to that, to have them kind of assess the general threat, and we'll send that back out to the committee. Because it's a good question, and I hear that a lot too, but I don't know how to appropriately give you the right answer. So I'll put that on my follow-up list.
It definitely depends on what country you're in as well. So if there are no further questions for Justin, then we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, which is data mining. And that would be Matt, if you would like to turn to tab B.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm going to shift gears a little bit from what Justin was talking about. I'm going to talk about our data mining function and give you all a brief overview of the results of our data mining work from last year. So as a quick reminder, state law requires that we conduct audit work at each state agency at least once every 3 years. We had been fulfilling that requirement through our performance audits and through our IT security audits. In 2019, we also added a data mining function to help fulfill that requirement as well. which I'll just take a second to refresh you all on what our data mining function is. Basically, our data mining team reviews state agency credit card transactions to identify potential fraud, waste, or abuse. As you may recall, state agencies have state-issued credit cards that they can use on certain purchases like office supplies or to cover travel costs. Each year, our data mining team uses some pretty advanced data analytics to go through those purchasing procurement card transactions to try to look for and identify suspicious or unusual purchases. Our goal in that is to try to help to detect and prevent fraud, waste, and abuse within those credit card purchases. Last year was the first year that we started doing follow-ups with state agencies on some of those suspicious transactions. We followed up with the Department for Children and Families on some purchases that we had flagged as unusual. Those included $100,000 in Walmart gift cards and purchases for what looked like to us for personal items, like things like grocery receipts and car repairs. Ultimately, we found some control weaknesses, but no evidence of fraud, waste, or abuse. The gift cards were purchased in 2017 to help ensure clients kept receiving their benefits during a systems upgrade, and the personal items were also purchased for DCF clients in kind of emergency situations for things like groceries and additional support. We did make some recommendations to DCF to address a few of those control weaknesses surrounding some of those client purchases. Looking ahead, we plan to follow up with the Department of Commerce on some travel expenses from fiscal years 2018 and 2019. And we also plan to follow up with the Osawatomie State Hospital and the State Treasurer's Office on some transactions the team flagged earlier this year. That concludes my update. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have on our data mining work.
All right, committee questions. Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize, I am new to the committee and this report. Two questions. One on the credit cards or the cards that were made available. Did you check for false identifications or IDs that there could be fake names in that report? I mean, everything would look copacetic and you wouldn't know if a user was valid or not. And then also a follow-up on Osawatomie State Hospital. What are you actually following up on the hospital? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Maybe to address your second question first on Osawatomie State Hospital. There's a lot of blank records. So when we review the data, it flagged a lot of kind of missing descriptions and blank records on there. So we wanted to poke around on that a little bit just to kind of see. And I might ask for a little bit of clarification on your first question. Are you referring to the $100,000 in gift cards? So we were able to review supporting documentation for 300 of the 1,000 gift cards that were paid out. And in those cases, we didn't identify anything as suspicious. But one thing that we couldn't do was to verify, A, whether or not that recipient, the DCF client, received that gift card or whether they're eligible for those benefits. All we were able to do was to verify that there was the appropriate supporting documentation showing that it went to a DCF client.
That might be a larger scope audit at some point, yes. Any other questions? Yes, Senator Ware?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So did you have a chance to present these findings to the folks at DCF? And I'm wondering what their response, the tone of their response, frankly, and probably as much as the specifics.
So we transmitted a memo to DCF last Friday with giving the results to the audit follow-up. It being a little bit different than what our normal performance audits are. This didn't actually require a formal response from them, so we have not heard back formally from DCF at this time.
Okay, well, I do have a quick question then. It said on the back page that you had reviewed about 76 state agencies relating to the credit cards, is that correct? And it looks like you've only flagged Osawatomie and DCF, is that right? Or are there others?
So the Department of Commerce, Osawatomie State Hospital, and the State Treasurer's Office would be on our short list.
Oh, yes,
to
I see
review
it there.
for
I'm
follow-up.
sorry, I apologize. Okay. And then, On the background piece of it says that the state law requires us to conduct work at each state agency at least once every three years. And when you did the 76 agencies, would that fulfill that statute for all of those agencies for 3 years?
I think it helps us touch on those agencies. So it's not an in-depth analysis and audit, performance audit like we do, but we are looking, using those data analytical tools to basically increase our presence in state agencies by being able to look at any state agency that made a procurement card transaction. So it wouldn't be all state agencies, but if they had a procurement card and used it, they would be included in our analytical review to try to flag suspicious or unusual purchases.
Okay, Justin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Completely correct. I might also remind the committee, through our IT security audits every 3 years, we contact every state agency to ask them about what type of sensitive data they maintain and kind of the parameters that we get that that's not great audit work. It's technically satisfies requirements. So then when we lay on top of that, the data mining plus the performance audits, we feel like we were making a good faith effort to get that. But you're correct. If we only had gotten 76, I don't think that'd be good enough because we're supposed to do it every agency. So we cover that through the IT securities, but try to layer these other things on to make a more good faith effort to really get some good coverage, not just, hey, we're the auditors. I mean, that's clearly some of the intent is so they know the auditors are around and looking, but we try to layer that so we get a little bit more in-depth coverage.
Okay, so good to know. Great review. And so we look forward to the updates on this last bullet point on the Department of Commerce and Treasurer's Office and Osawatomie. Anything else, committee or Matt? No? All right, thank you very much, Matt. We're going to move on to the consent calendar items, and Chris, you'll walk us through that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we have 2 items on the consent calendar. First of which is acceptance of the performance audit, looking at the county government procurement and contracting practices that Heidi just presented. And the second is the approval of 1 limited scope audit. I'm sorry, there's a small typo in the memo. It says 2. There really is only 1. It is looking at the financial position of Butler Community College Council Grove site, which is outside of the county. And that was requested by Representative Williams.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Chris? If there is no motion to object, then the consent calendar items will stay and they'll be automatically approved. Okay, great. Additional business, Justin. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will cover this quickly. If you turn to Tab D, just wanted to give the committee a quick update on where some of the bills that are relevant to our office currently stand. So substitute for House Bill 2049, this is the one that would prohibit state agencies from charging us a fee when we are requesting records as part of an audit. So that has actually been, it was passed, it's now actually been engrossed and presented to the governor. So that is now to the governor's office, so that bill is well underway. Several of the others, currently, remember we always do these in duplicate, so the Senate Bill 17 was that duplicate. It's sitting in Senate transparency. There's no need to move that forward since you already have the House version done. House Bill 2050 and Senate Bill 16, so these are, again, duplicate bills that they're intended to get rid of some unnecessary financial reporting requirements. We're not in that business anymore, but state law still says, hey, post-audit should get this. We don't need it. A little bit of a waste of state agency time. We just feel like it's a little bit of government streamlining. Those are both cross the chamber, so one is in currently House Appropriation and one is in Senate Ethics and Transparency. So we'll be keeping an eye on those. I assume that's a very small bill. I assume the legislature's been busy prior to turnaround day, so those have, since they've crossed, there was no need to worry about them until after turnaround anyway. So I'll kind of be tracking that. I will then also remind members, something we always like to keep you apprised of. There currently, to my knowledge, there's only one bill out there that would add new statutory audit requirements to our office. We have several that are already outstanding from previous years. It's in Senate Bill 173, which would have us do an at-risk audit follow-up since we'd done that, if you recall, a couple years back. They've added that provision. That would be due. Currently, it's been moving around a little bit, but currently by the end, or by the beginning of 2024, that would currently overlay our requirement to do a cost study analysis of K-12 education. That's fine. We can actually do them in tandem. It shouldn't create a problem. But I do want to always let you know, because as we've discussed before, all of those statutory requirements do take away some of your discretion as a committee to assign those topics. So, as you see those bills, if that's something that's concerning to you, I would like to let you know that some of those provisions are out there in case that comes up. So, I'm sure happy to answer any questions about the bills.
All right, committee, any questions for Justin? If not, we'll go ahead into final, any other last items and meeting update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a reminder to the committee members that our next and final committee meeting that has been scheduled for this session is May 5th. That's on a Wednesday. I'm going to work with the chair. This is a little unorthodox. Usually after you come back from first adjournment, we try to catch you right before you do, so we can have like your undivided attention for 2 or 3 hours, because we usually have a lot of work to release. You're all coming back on a Monday, so that's really not, probably doesn't do us any good to try to bring you in. We can't take advantage of that. So I'm going to try to pack things tight, probably run from like 11:30 to 1:30, but we realize you'll be back from first adjournment and maybe have some committee work, some floor work. So we'll do that as best we can. This is just kind of an unusual year and how it falls out. So we will be keeping you noticed, and I'll work on the draft agenda with the chair.
I can't believe we're already almost to our last committee meeting for the year. So be considering any items that you want attention, because that's an important meeting that sets us up for the next following year. So with that, if there are no further questions or comments, committee, we are adjourned.